No, I'm looking forward. That's going to be what, part two of next week's webinar
Yeah, we're
session.
going to be talking a little bit more about that. And again, remember that even with us talking about it, we're only going to be able to go over what is the proposed final rule
Right.
rather than what is actually going to be the final rule, which we won't find out until Q3 of this year.
Yeah, we'll
When
be sure to have a part
we'll
three
do an
once
update.
once
Yeah,
that's
we'll do
out.
an update around then.
Cool. Well, just a couple housekeeping things. Everyone, thanks for joining in with us today. If you're here for the first time, welcome. This is the EPICompliance step-by-step webinar podcast. My name is Ray Walters. I'll be your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jose Delgado. 20 plus years of experience in healthcare consulting, currently owns a mental telehealth clinic. His insights is always appreciated. Um, we're up to 88 subscribers. We've been doing this webinar series since October 2023. So, again, if you've subscribed to our channel, I appreciate it greatly. We're trying to get to 100. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. I sent the link in the chat, and we post all of our post webinars there. This one will actually go up tomorrow. But if you're looking for some more insights or some more episodes, please check us out. But Jose, you want to go ahead and we'll dive into
Yeah,
it?
let's punch it. So this one's
Well,
an interesting one because it kind of, and we'll go into it more as well, but I have almost daily conversations about this topic and to an extent, the role of AI. So, and I say that because Siri and Alexa, they all act as an AI. So, and to some extent or another, whether they're voice activated or queried manually, right? So the trick is finding a way to make antiquated laws like HIPAA, and I say antiquated because for most of our viewership, you remember the days that HIPAA was passed into law. You know,
yeah,
we had Clinton in office, and we had this thing called a landline. Most people did not have a phone line. If they had a mobile phone, it was in their car, you know, as in attached to their car. The internet was not a thing. Google was a nothing company. Amazon was a nothing company. You know, they hadn't been created when HIPAA came out. So these Apple was only seen in schools because the education contract that they had. So you had a very different scenario that no one could have come up with what we're able to do now technologically. So we really have situations where this problem that we're talking about today is a problem for a lot of different reasons because the law is not designed to deal with this. And we're finding that in a lot of different other places as well with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency
mhm.
and just with, you know, an internet bill of rights has been kicked around, excuse me, censorship all over the place. So when we talk about Siri and this deal as in this lawsuit, we're talking about $95 million
Yep.
that is coming about due to a lawsuit that stems from a 2019 whistleblower piece in The Guardian, was it, Ray? Thought I had it up.
Yeah, Guardian.
Yeah, The Guardian. All right. So, what does that mean? It means that this settlement is only covering the time period of a decade, and it's only covering Siri enabled devices. Now, it's only going to go for this lawsuit is only for America. A French human rights NGO is filing another lawsuit in France. And so, yeah, so we're looking at $95 million for all complainants. Most people don't even know that this thing is happening. What are we really looking at here? On the healthcare side, what is our exposure? Well, a lot of providers and RNs have products. But even now, with the way that the Bluetooth headphones work, with the way that the watches work, What's our exposure when we have these kinds of situations? Now,
Right.
um, you've got all kinds of reasons why people are wearing the watches. And right now, for me, the watch is the biggest problem, not necessarily the phone, because the phone is easy for us to go through the menu and say, all right, let me just turn Siri off while I'm at work. A lot of times this can also be helped. Well, we'll go over how to prevent this in a minute, but we got to find where our holes are in order for us to figure out how to prevent this, right? So if the problem is that Siri and Alexa are doing their job too well, they're paying attention to everything that goes on around them. They're paying attention anytime something even sounds like their name is getting picked up, and then they're recording the conversations. This becomes a problem. Good luck getting a business associate agreement from Apple. It ain't gonna happen. Good luck getting one of those from Google. It ain't gonna happen unless you're specifically in that Google Office suite that they have the competitor 365.
Right.
Then they'll sign a BAA, but I don't think that that even covers Alexa. I think that just covers the products that you're buying there. So how do we deal with this? What's the exposure? What's the exposure could be massive and it could be absolutely minimal. The trick is going to be figuring out how deep does this go? Right? So,
Well, there was an example in the article that I posted, Jose. Maybe we can touch on it.
yeah, let's touch on
It
that
said
then.
one of the plaintiffs in the case said they asked their doctor about a surgical treatment, and then they started receiving ads, or I guess ads
Yeah.
showing up for that exact or procedure, and it
See,
doesn't
and
re
that's the
it.
kind of stuff. So how can I do this? Because I don't want to get anyone into trouble. I am not a
Right,
lawyer. All
right.
right. I am not a lawyer. So if you are looking for for legal advice, get yourself a lawyer. Just like if you're looking for financial advice. However, with that said, if I'm sitting here, I don't know if I want to dive into this. Because if I'm a covered entity and I start digging in here,
Yeah.
this could be really, really, really bad.
It's
Because
just,
we keep our phones on us 24/7.
I was gonna
We
say
keep our watches on us 24/7.
it's the phone just I mean I can relate, right? It's like you mention a shoe brand or something and it's all of a sudden
Oh
I'm
yeah.
starting getting
No,
ads.
all
It's
of us have
just
had this happen to us, right? Like it's happened to me. I was talking to my wife about
pretty
going on vacation
targeted
somewhere.
ads. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden targeted ads showed up for like a week and a half and I was like, "What the?"
Yep.
All right. So the problem is how do we really want to open this can of worms? If we have not had an actual breach of data, this is a very, very tricky situation because how do we as a covered entity open this up? For the ones in the court case that go back 10 years, if I remember properly, this goes back to customers all the way back to 2011.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, the only ones that would even have statute limitation wouldn't have statute limitation problems. So there's the ones from 2011 to 2017, perhaps all the way back to 2015, depending on the funny COVID time era, right? Because there's weird aspects of that time era.
Yeah.
Do I want to go down this road? Because how would I even go down this road if this is if I did want to do this? Well, I would have to figure out what product I had back then. And according to this court case, was it Siri enabled or was it Alexa enabled? If I had one of those speakers that was in my office, Alexa, play whatever, then yeah, it's probably listening and it's probably recording, so I can go back to as long as I've had that. I don't know if they have. I'm sure they do have a log, but how would one even get that without a court subpoena? So if you do find a court willing to give you a subpoena so you can get that record and then you could dive in to see what all of the data was obtained, who's going to be able to read
It
that
just
crap?
seems like such
It
a rat
this is
race just to
this is an impossible headache. This is an
right.
absolutely impossible headache because if we think about it, right? This is they didn't in the none of the articles I've seen have they said a roundabout figure of how many people were affected, right?
No, I didn't.
But
Yeah.
if the number is the number is saying tens of millions of people may qualify for the settlement in the US. You know what? Let's just put the simple number at 10 million. Or you know what? Just 1 million. Right? What's the minimum mandatory penalty for a HIPAA security violation?
It's 50,000 per incident.
So we're looking at
Or are we talking about patients affected? I'm sorry.
no. So tens of millions of people may qualify for the actual settlement
Oh, the
for the
settlement
95
piece.
mil in this settlement. If we assume that each one was a patient,
Yeah.
right? And the mandatory penalty is 50,000 per, we're looking at $50 billion in mandatory penalties, and that's on the Siri side, the Apple side. That's not on our side as the
Yeah.
covered entity. Because if we go through and we start playing with this stuff, we got to report. So I'm very
Crazy.
curious to see how this is going to progress because they've already been found guilty. So there's proof that they were doing it. Now it's just a matter of whether OCR and the federal government want to put pressure because of this. If the federal government decides to put pressure on this, then you're going to see, and again, we can cut it down to 100 million, $100,000, or 100,000 people times $50,000. You're looking at what? 50 mil?
Yep.
5 mil? Mathematics is
Lot
awful.
of money. That's
Too
all you need
much
to know.
money.
Big money.
Looking at no, 5 billion.
I think that's
That's
right.
that's no, I just did it with the calculator. You think I'm that smart? So I mean, now again, anytime there's a settlement, the federal government hits you with, hey, this is what we should charge you, and then they go and say, let's negotiate, right? It may be 3 bill, whatever. Forget Doge. We just made all our money back. You know what I mean? Like this is wild. So if we're not going to go backwards, then we need to move and progress our situation forwards. Now, one thing that I have been seeing quite often lately, as we've been doing this HIPAA security risk analysis this past year, a lot of practices are allowing employees to use Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Some of these devices need Wi-Fi in order to work. The speaker it needs Wi-Fi. Your watch doesn't because it's Bluetooth enabled by the
Bluetooth.
phone.
Yeah.
Turn off the Bluetooth, the device in and of itself isn't transmitting information. It may be storing information, but it's not transmitting information.
I can't remember if it was last week's webinar or the week before, somebody mentioned that they have an Apple Watch, and I can relate. That sometimes I got one
Mm-hmm.
here, this right here.
Mm-hmm.
You hit this button right here, and if you hold it too
Yep.
long, your Siri will come up.
Yep. No, you're
And
absolutely right.
I've had
So,
occasions where I'm resting my hand down
yep.
where it turns it on. You know,
No,
you don't even know
and
it.
again, it's the ease of use, right? It
Yeah.
always goes back to that seesaw of security versus ease of use. These are not devices designed for healthcare. These are devices designed for life and for the masses. Ease of use is far more important than security. Cool. But how do we, in a scenario and an environment that I would argue is just as regulated as security, if not top secret security clearance, environment, how do we deal with these kinds of devices? Because they're only going to become more prevalent because of a variety of reasons. We have companies that are doing remote monitoring that are Bluetooth enabled, that are Wi-Fi enabled. The remote monitoring tools, we have to make sure that they're recording things in a specific manner and where that information is being stored and where that information is being transmitted to. So we just start going down this high tech rabbit hole, right? Um, it's the part of the problem that I have with AIs and EHRs right now too. But let's focus on this piece. If I'm in an office setting and I want to limit this situation because I am aware of it, but I don't really want to dig into it, which is where I think the federal government is going to turn a blind eye to this because if they were going to do something, they would have already picked it up. Because this is the civil side. Nobody said anything about the criminal side. Cool. Or yeah, criminal side because it would be OCR.
Sure.
Um, then I'm not going to be the one that brings it up. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to do it. It's not worth it to me. If I'm an Apple employee, there's some money to be made. Whistleblower is a real thing. But if I'm in office, I've got to mitigate that risk as much as possible right now. And there are different ways that I do that. Like I said, like just in general, I would either make the Wi-Fi password so impossibly strong with IT that your team cannot remember the password and they won't be having it because only IT has the password. Not management, not providers, not executive team. The only people that have it are the executive team. Now, why would we do this? We would do this to make sure that personal devices are not on company Wi-Fi. Now, if you're in a single office outpatient facility, you probably still have signal because, it's not 2002 anymore, where you're in a building and you have no signal at all. So you still have a risk there. It's a different
Sure.
kind of risk. It's a smaller risk, but the risk is still there. And again, this is always a seesaw. Is it worth it to you? If your office is completely insular, where your providers, your staff members don't need to be speaking to anybody outside of the office, as in providers don't travel, things of that nature, then you may have a very strict personal device policy, but it has to be documented and you have to follow through. If I am in a situation where providers are mobile, then ways that we can mitigate some of this risk is through having a hotspot. That again, it creates its own Wi-Fi, its own signal. Any of the devices that we have while we're running around at an ALF or at a hospital doing rounds, whatever the case may be, but or even just traveling from one location to the other, and I'm doing work in the back while someone's driving me, whatever the case may be. My information is secure as we're traveling, as we're working, right? So every environment's going to be slightly different, and this is where we've got to go and sit down as part of the executive team and say, okay, I want to do X. My provider wants to keep his phone and watch on him at all times. There's no way around it. He demands it. Cool. All right. What can we do to protect the patient data, considering that we have an obstinate provider? Now, I'm pinning this on the provider only because providers tend to be the more difficult ones when it comes to compliance because they're using more information and they need more information in order to do their job. So, what does that mean? We can tell them no watch in the office. That knocks out one piece. We can tell them, hey, there has to be a way to disable Siri and Alexa on your phone and your mobile device and your watch.
Just turn the
There
Bluetooth
has to
off.
be a way to do it. Do I know how to do it? No. But let's look up Apple Watch Siri disable. Uh,
Right? Turn the Bluetooth off for starters.
Yeah, you can
So
turn
it's
off your
not,
Bluetooth and then that turns off the Siri,
yeah,
right? You can go to settings and Siri and turn it off just flat out right there on the watch.
I
So
mean, with
that
this,
will
yeah, you
solve,
just hold the button, boom, you can turn it off anytime.
and there you go. That is an easy way to solve a problem without having to do much. Now, will you as an office manager have to probably do it because some providers are of a certain age that they use technology but don't understand it? Probably. But you know who you are if you have to do that. So just do it, be done with it, and they won't ever know. Because they probably this is the same population that doesn't use Siri to begin with. You know what I mean? Like if you're closer to Medicare than you are to your 21st birthday, you're probably not using Siri all that often. You know, you're probably not using Alexa all that often, right? Like I'm right in the middle of that and I don't use either one just because that's just I'm not that bloody lazy for me personally. Like it's just not that. I'm used to looking things up on my own. So, now let's go down this rabbit hole. If we don't have a watch, but we do have a phone, the phone, same thing. We should be able to easily turn off the listening device. Now, are we able to? That that's tricky. We should be able to, but are we able to? There isn't a menu setting on any phone that I've seen, any smartphone that I've seen, that just has turn off, suggested ads because that goes to every single app that you have. This is where you have all those cookie settings, right? Like, hey, you want to turn off everything but what is necessary to run the website. And sometimes, depending on the website, I may not care about the extra crap and tell it to turn off even the necessary ones to run a website. Because you don't need a lot of these basic websites that you go to for like restaurants and hotels and movie theaters and stores. You don't need all that crap. You can just turn off all of those settings and there you go. Just run it and gun it, right?
At least on
Um,
the I'm looking at here on my iPhone, just because I've
yeah,
never dove deep into it, but there's an option so you can go to your settings and apps, and it says one of the options is talk to Siri, and basically it's the prompts. If you say "Hey
yep,
Siri," it'll come up on your phone.
yep,
You can turn that off, and then there's another option that says press side button for Siri, like the side button
yep,
on your phone. You can turn that
yep.
off as well.
Yep. So I have an Android. Bixby is the one that Droids or Samsungs at the very least use, but it's the same thing as Siri and Alexa. I've never turned it on, but that doesn't mean that the phone is not listening,
Right.
right? And this is a situation where that privacy, that Internet Bill of Rights is going to be really, really interesting to play with. What risk is there for us as a healthcare entity? Currently, it seems benign. But as with all things, there's definitely a possibility of it being taken over, just like the way your computer can get spoofed and taken over with a virus, and
Here's
somebody can
a
watch what you're doing with their phone,
here's a
with your own camera.
question, Jose.
Yep.
Like as the patient, you
Yep.
can't tell the patient that they can't have or that they have to turn these things off, can you? Um,
So
especially
now hold on though.
if
Now
you're
remember
exchanging.
that if it's a patient's device, they are giving not it's
Another.
not informed consent, but it's implied consent because they're bringing it
Okay,
with them. So
okay,
you
that's
think
what I was
about
looking
this
for.
kind of like if they brought somebody with them.
Hmm. Yep,
Hey, I've got my wife on the phone. She couldn't come in person, but she wanted to be in with this conversation. That's consent.
got
Hey,
it.
I'm taking a telemedicine visit from my workplace or from my home or from the store, which happens far more often than you'd think. That's consent because
Gotcha.
the patient is initiating and doing all that. Remember, we don't have risk when it's on the patient end. We only have risk when it's the provider end.
Gotcha.
And they don't do Razor flip phones anymore. They don't do Nokia bricks anymore. Like those don't work for 100 different reasons. Obsolescence, the towers are different. They run on a different signal now. Whatever.
That's 3G, man.
Huh?
So we're going back to 3G.
Oh
I
God. I mean, I don't even think it was three. It was
know,
still
man.
analog signal. And I think those were still analog signal,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, I think so. I think so. Trying to, yeah.
so then you have the other problem too, where if you've noticed, you can't send a phone call sometimes, but you are still able to send text messages or use your apps that take data. Why is that? Because the signal is different.
Yep.
So then you have to figure out, okay, what's listening to what? Is the Siri running on this signal or on that signal? And again, we're going too far into the weeds because I'm not that high techie, right? This would be something that you really, really got to shut it all down. Then at that point, if somebody really started looking at it and really started to be a stickler about it, and you really wanted to be completely 100% safe, then the only thing I can tell you is make sure that every device is left in the employees' cars. That's the reality of it. Or they're all turned off, and you can prove that they're all turned off. Outside of that, it ain't gonna happen.
Boy,
So
that's a big ask.
it's a huge ask
Yeah.
because I mean, if you've got kids, right? Hey, what's gonna happen? Well, you can train your staff to make sure that the schools know to call the workplace and not the cell phone. Okay, cool. But what about grandma? What about, like it shouldn't be a big ask because for 100 years before we had cell phones, we didn't have phones, on our hip, in our pocket at all times, and we were just bloody fine. But to do that now is wild. A social media, you wouldn't think a social media website going dark would affect mentally and emotionally so many people. And yet it did. And it was out for like 48 hours, So, I mean,
The world's
what
ending.
are we gonna do here? Right. So to bring it around and to bring it all the way home, this is this is absolutely something you want to keep an eye on. Is this something that we as covered entities can act on? Sadly, I don't think so. I I don't think there's no way you're not going to get the BAA for it. You're not going
No.
to get to protect you from any issues. You're not going to get the assurances from Google and from Apple outside of, well, they're not going to give the data to you because you're the one that gathered it for them, but they'll give it to somebody who paid for them. What are we going to do? You know what I mean? Like until that first lawsuit against them comes through, and that's kind of the way that these court cases and compliance. This is honestly the way that compliance works. All right,
Yeah.
government passes law. Someone gets in trouble and sues and says, "This is bull. I can't follow this law, or this law is awful, or this is a wrong application." The court decides, and then it either goes back to the legislature for them to modify it, or the court becomes the prevailing opinion, right? So this is where having a compliance program that takes into account the final rules that are coming through, the court cases that are popping up, the actual final rule after the designated time period. Because right now, the agency, OCR, HHS, are telling you proposed changes
Right.
that they're going to make based on these laws, right? They create their CFRs, their federal regulations out based on the law that was passed by Congress. Then they put it in. They allow the public to talk, lobbying agencies to talk and put in comments. They take the comments in, and then they release them. And when they release them, that's what the official law and regulation and the CFR is. So then we have to start following it until the course cases come through to amend them. This stuff has gotten so complex that I don't know. I'm still waiting for the first court case in regards to remote monitoring tools, to be perfectly clear. Because I could absolutely see, and I'm waiting to see it, um, a HIPAA security problem with one of these remote monitoring tools. I'm waiting to see a court case regarding high tech and Stark. Why do I say high tech and Stark? Well, because now, back in the day, the federal government didn't want a lot of communication between practices, but now with all the quality measurements and everything, the Stark law has gotten a little bit murkier because they want you to communicate more and they're incentivizing a more cohesive network for patients to reside in so that way you can speed up the ease of access and hopefully improve quality. But a lot of times to do that, there's one owner. How do I how do
Right.
I how do I refer to myself without violating the anti-kickback? How do I refer to, maybe I'm not a whole owner, but I'm a part owner because I'm not the one running the day to day? That how do I send that person there without violating Stark? You know what I mean? Like, so these are the kinds of things that I'm waiting to see as a consultant. This is the kind of thing that we kind of have to sit on our hands and try to read the tea leaves, right? This is where we'll look at other like cases like this that come out. This is where we'll look at some of the OCR investigations that are on the breach list because those are higher end cases, they're higher visibility. So we can kind of get an idea of, okay, the courts haven't said this yet, but this is what they were looking for. Right. So there's those pieces. Then there's one other way that we kind of read the tea leaves to try to stay ahead of this stuff. And that is Taino Consultants is a government contractor. So we have in the past done worked with the federal and state governments in regards to certain projects in the healthcare field. So we're aware of what they're looking for because they send out requests for proposals. So then we'll see what it is that the different agencies are looking to target every year. So that's kind of how those are the kinds of things that we do to try to stay ahead
Sure.
of to stay ahead of the man, if you will. Right now, if I'm an office manager, I don't have time for all this crap. I got 40 hours a week worth of stuff and just keeping my office running and keeping my staff from fighting like children. So, how do I deal with this new scenario? This scenario specifically, I wouldn't address it. I really would. I would document, hey, we've looked at it. Right now, it's not viable for whatever reason to do this or to do that. But I would do something simple, like I said about the Wi-Fi thing, or at
Well, something as
least
simple
make.
as start at least having a policy in place for the same.
Yeah, what's our policy? Let's start documenting. Yes, I'm aware of this, but there's nothing that can be done at this
Smart
point in time.
devices policy.
Yeah, smart device policy. It's the same thing as there's a lot of little policies that we talk about, but it's not really included, but it should be, right? Um, there's this one in regards to devices. There's a social media policy in regards to employees. How do we deal with that piece? There's the public engagement. What is the policy for employees when they're out and about? So there are certain little things that we can include in the employee handbook to kind of address some of these areas that are a little bit more specific, like for me in what I always recommend for the social media piece and for the public policy piece is I don't care what you do. I don't the best way for you to live your life is for me to not know about it. What I mean by that is no, you should have your Facebook that everybody sees and then the one that has all the shenanigans. if you have a cell phone and you're worried about this, or you know that these people are using their cell phone during work, then there's ways to mitigate that. Let's change the Wi-Fi in the office, make it a little bit harder and a little bit more expensive for them. Perfect. Either that or just say, hey, if I see the phone, you're getting written up. That's
Right.
simple. So I mean, but then you have to follow through. You
Let's
can't follow through with just one person. You got to follow through with everybody because now you open yourself up to a discrimination issue. So
sure.
again, when we do these, we want to take into account the ramifications of our actions.
So, Jose,
Yeah.
I want to break down a real world example. It came from one of our attendees. I'm gonna keep your name anonymous.
Yep.
But Jose, imagine this. So you're a chiropractor and you use an iPad to take notes in an adjusting room.
Yep.
Um, when you move to an exam room, there's already another iPad in there. So you leave the first one at the front desk. But now there's a
Okay.
debate. Should the iPad stay in the adjusting room, right? Or does it have to be taken to the front desk every time?
So
If
there's
that, well,
so this is just a portable device situation.
correct.
And to oversimplify it.
One last tidbit
Yeah.
though, right? So, the chiropractor wants to leave it. Um,
Okay.
and the concern is, it could walk off, right? If it was accessed by a
Yeah, it can
patient
just walk
anytime.
away. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
Okay, so let's deal with this. Let's break it down into its components. The easiest way to deal with this is if a portable device doesn't actually move from the exam room, why is it a portable device? Why can't we just use a desktop? It's going to be
true.
cheaper. It's going to be cheaper to buy, cheaper to work on. It may take up a little bit more space, but then you solve the it walking off on its own problem, right? That piece of the breach. Now, a device in an exam room that is unsupervised has its own risks and rewards, right? The risk is nosy patient. Hey, can I get into this device? Who can I look up? Maybe I know somebody in here. Let me start looking up. Oh, Susie looked at me funny in church yesterday. Let's see if she's in here. Oh, Bobby's, blah blah blah. Let's see if Bobby's in here. Oh, I remember Andy was said he was a patient. I wonder what he's actually in here for. You know what I mean? Like you can't have that. Either way, the device has to be locked.
Yeah.
Either way, no matter how you look at it, the device has to be locked.
So in other words, put it in some sort of cabinet after use, right?
I mean, it could be locked. The device, I mean, a
Or
desktop
you're
can't
saying
in a
locked it.
cabinet,
I
right?
got
Like,
you. It's got to have a
but the
password.
device has to be locked, so you cannot
Gotcha.
get it.
Yeah.
Then, honestly, if we're being perfectly transparent, I don't want the EHR to stay open. Device has to be locked, so the employee has to put in a password. EHR has to be locked, so the provider or employee has to put in a password. And then you lock down the device as soon as you leave. It's a pain in the ass. I've had providers complain about it for 15
I'm gonna
years.
say it's
Blah,
a
blah, blah. That's too much work. I had to remember one more password. No, it's the same password you're already using everywhere else. Miss me with that nonsense. This is a reality of the matter. If you're going to have a device, whether it's a portable one or a fixed location, you need a password to get in. If for no other reason, then it's good habits to have for auditing purposes. Because if you have an employee that does something stupid, you want to be able to track it down to who that employee was. You can't do that without an audit system. You can't do that without individual credentials and logins. You
absolutely.
can't. It's impossible. Now, I've seen this before and I don't like this. If in order to assist the provider, the staff members will unlock the device and then leave the patient with the device, but the EHR is still logged out. Now, your basic Medicare patient, not going to look at it because they can't get into the EHR. However, your half savvy individual is going to know, hey, there may be some stuff that was downloaded onto the device. whether it was an image or something, anything in the temp files, anything in the downloaded area, right? Wherever, because a lot of times in order to open something up, you got to download it. So
Yeah.
even if it's coming from the EHR. So Bendel, give me 1 second. We'll definitely address it. So if you want to start typing it up, the question that you've got, and we'll address it in a moment. So the problem is if that even if that device is unlocked, the patient can do something, but they can't get into the EHR unless you have a very, very clear policies and procedures about how information is being transferred from your cloud EHR to the device. You're not going to be able to go and you're not going to be able to go and manage that, which means that any person will be able to go and look it up. I've literally done walkthroughs, gone through. So, all right, I go to the temp folder. There's a ton of images from MRIs to ER reports to whatever the case may be. And I'm just sitting here like, guys, this is the problem. This right here is the problem. This is why we
But
can't have nice things because you broke it. You know what I mean? Like, so
that's why
again,
you're there.
yeah. This is why I'm there to do the audit, right? So this is why I normally say just log out the device, log out the EHR. This way it's a two-factor authentication because I got to put in a different, hopefully it's a different
That's
password, but I'm not going
true
to touch that today. But
with
hopefully
your
they have to put
EMR.
in a password at least twice to be able to do their job.
Yeah.
Is requiring two-factor. Yes, there is, yes, some cloud-based EHR software is requiring two-factor. Yes. You are absolutely 100 correct. It is 100% correct. This is a crazy hassle and is requiring a text to a phone. You're 100% correct. However, a lot of providers are already used to the two-factor authentication due to that's how it works with a soft token when you're prescribing controlled substances. So if you're providing any controlled substances, you're used to this two-factor authentication. Because of the change breach and the high profile protocol, the high profile breaches that have been occurring the last 2 years, a lot of EHRs are moving to two-factor. Can you change it? Usually, yes. It's a settings
When you
issue.
say change it, as in you can turn it off.
You can turn it off. Usually, you can turn off the two-factor in
To
OneDrive.
Jennifer's point, obviously if you have it set to go to your cell phone and let's just say your organization has a no cell phone policy, then can you change it to email?
But then the email is even a bigger hassle,
Yeah,
right?
I mean either way it's a
So you're just, I mean, it goes back to again this
change
awful
fingerprint.
seesaw that we have of security versus usability and access. We have to find a way to balance these two out so it's nice and clean. Some situations are far cleaner than others. I've seen the fingerprint, I've seen the retinal scanners. Those can be expensive, those can be cheap. I've seen the ID card. So it's
Yeah.
an ID card tap, it unlocks the computer. But again, now I have to get all the ID cards back.
That's
I
a
had to
risk
get the
too.
ID card reader. I had to get the ID card maker. You know what I mean? Like, so it all depends on what do we want our organization to look like? How do we want to operate? Because there's only so many ways to skin this cat, right? Um, Let me see here.
It's
In a
like
perfect world, in a perfect world, okay, I would have the EHR, which some EHRs are capable of doing right now, of setting up a schedule for each and every user. So that way they're only allowed to access the EHR during work hours. Let them do the dual authentication when they come in. Let them do the dual authentication when they log out or in between a large break of, let's say, lunchtime.
mhm.
Not a big deal. That's a way to manage that seesaw, right? But again, look at how many steps on the management side we had to go to. I had to find out, can my EHR even do this? Great.
And you
They
got to
can.
set those parameters too for
Then I've got to do
each.
this for every single employee. Now, keep in mind, it's easy to do with my log in, log out employees. Harder part is the providers who are constantly doing those after hours.
A lot of heavy
Constantly.
lifting up front for sure.
Constantly. It's a lot of heavy administrative lifting. And then let's say I put the provider for 6 p.m. because nobody's going to work after 6 p.m. No, no, you know what? Let's go 8 p.m. just in case. You're going to get a phone call mad from a provider because it's 8:45 at night and this is the first time in 9 months that he can't log in and do what he needs to do because of this, that, and the other. We're not going to discuss the fact on what device is he doing this, where is he doing this from, is the network secure? We're just not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But we're going to deal with this conversation. How do we deal? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of factors to this that cannot just be handled just because. We have to address these as a whole and then dive in. What do we want this to look like? When do we want this to look like this? Because if we're transitioning from, hey, I just log in once and we're good to go here, a lot of the EHRs automatically log you out with 10 minutes of non activity.
Right.
Some of them are even
Auto
five
log.
minutes of inactivity, they log you out. Cool. That's great. Now it's just about when does the device get locked out? And that's an easy fix in every setting. Every device has its settings. You can do that. Bam, boom, bam, done. Right? Now that's two forms of identification. For a small office, you're good to go. In my personal opinion, without reviewing any facts of where the devices are and so on and so forth, and all the usual legal mumbo jumbo to protect my ass. So, but I would honestly say that's the best way to do this. Another way that you can do this is by training your team on VPNs. If they're going to work from home or working remotely, and this way, this helps as another layer. They log into the VPN and then they can go for it, where they log into the company server and then they can access the EHR, but nothing gets downloaded to the device. This way, you limit the importance of the device. If you look on the breach list, the naughty list, there was actually last week when we were looking at it and discussing it, just scrolling through the first page like I'll do anytime it gets brought up. 2 or 3 of these were on there because of a portable device that was stolen or lost. Not because there was an actual breach, but it may be breached. I don't know, because I can't account for the damn device. You know what I mean? Like,
Craziness.
but if the device is a dump computer, so nothing gets downloaded on there, the only thing that's on there is your email, which you should not be having automatically log in for you when you log into the computer. And then you just have to log into the EHR, which the EHR should not have an automatic password, an automatic, you know what I mean? Like your computer, you should not be setting your browser to just automatically put in your login and password. Just in general, please stop if you are. I know a lot of people do it for their banks and their credit cards and stuff like that. Stop. It's not safe. Stop it. Stop it. You know,
What about
like
encryption,
everybody used
Jay, for
everybody
like
used to remember 50 phone numbers back in the 90s. You can remember 20 passwords when most of them are pretty much the same. So like miss me with this. We can do this. We just have to find a way that everyone is going to get buy-in. That's the hard part. The hard part is not the protocol. The hard part is the buy-in from the team. The way to do that, get them involved with the problem.
that and this
Get them involved with the
ongoing
problem.
training, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is training when you go over it because then you can
Go
go
over the
over.
scenarios with them, you know?
Yeah, you can go over. Okay, well, what about this? All right, well, that won't work for us because of this environment. Oh, that'll work. Oh, wait, no, that's too expensive. Okay, but you're going through all of the different scenarios and you're seeing this seesaw in real time. How do we deal with this? So
Yeah.
I hope this makes sense for everybody. I hope that this, I don't want this to be scary for you, right? Like this topic, especially if you really start going down a rabbit hole, I definitely had a moment where I was like, all right, everybody's device is getting a magnet stuck to it the second they walk in a door, right? Like I don't want that. It's not a good look. So I would definitely say Um, don't panic. This is not the thing to panic about. The thing to panic about is the five things that you actually can deal with. Like what is your current personal device policy in the office? What is your current Wi-Fi network look like? If it looks like a preschool office, preschool classroom, you have a problem because everybody's device is everywhere and they're all dirty. Anybody who's got a kid in preschool knows they're constantly coming back with bugs. So you can't have everybody's personal device in a clean room. You need to have them separate. I'm going to even include, again, if I don't have a VPN and a hotspot that is company owned, I'm going to include in that those devices that are used for work but move around. Those are a little bit dirtier than the ones that stay there all the time. So is that something we need to address, or is that something we don't need to address? I don't know. It depends on your environment. Where do these devices go? How long are they there for? Do they go home? Do they go to their kids' school? Do they go to an airport? Things of that nature. How are they logging into different networks? Are they logging into different networks? If they're not logging into different networks, it's not a problem. So again,
Right.
it just there's a lot of things that once you have a default policy, which an entity like EPICompliance can provide for that as a roadmap of the things you kind of need to address, then you can kind of go through the specifics of your practice, of your business model, and really just hone in, which is what you want to do.
No, good
So I hope
points.
this helps. I hope this helps. If you need help with this stuff, that's where Ray and I come in. Please feel free, use us as a resource. That's what we're here for. That's why we do this. We want to help make complex topics simple and approachable to deal with because we can't compliance has gotten to a point where we can't stick our head in the sand anymore. We can't. We absolutely the repercussions are too strong, either on the government side or on the other side when things get caught. So,
I would say, if anything, Jose, I think one thing that will make every healthcare professional here at least think twice before saying, "Hey Siri," in the office setting.
absolutely, absolutely. Siri should not be used for
Hey Siri.
anything. The only time you should be saying, "Hey Alexa," is if you have an employee named Alexa or a vendor named Alexa coming through, right? Like, which I feel bad for all of those people named Alexa or Alex or anything remotely close to it because their lives have to have been difficult. So,
Well,
yeah, that's where we're at.
I know we had was it Bendel that had maybe had a question to throw here in the
I
chat. I
didn't
didn't.
see the question pop up though.
Well, we'll take this time now. If anybody has any questions, concerns, or maybe some real world examples you want to share, please throw that in chat. We'll take the next few minutes to answer those.
Yeah, while we're waiting for anybody who's going to type that up, what are we going to be talking about next week, Ray?
Next week, as we mentioned earlier, Jose, we're going to talk about the second part of the HIPAA updates for
That's
2025.
right. That's right. See,
So,
this is why I need medication. Um,
hey
and
Siri, do I
then
need med?
yeah. Do I need meds, Siri? Alexa, do I
Really
need
couldn't say. Oh my
do I need
God,
to go
My Siri just went off.
and
Holy cow, I gotta turn it on.
Oh, that's
That's
too
funny.
funny. That's well, that proof.
Siri
She's
agreed.
always
Siri says
listening.
you do need medication, Jose. That's
Oh, she does. Oh, she's the new
that's
Magic 8 Ball. Got it. Thanks.
my
Way to
Siri
make
knows
me.
who you are. So
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. At least it's proof that my English is good looking, right? You know.
that's very true. Very true. Mendel, I appreciate that. Jennifer, appreciate you.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Mendel, there's no we don't issue any certificates for attending this event. But what you can do is we will release this video on our YouTube channel. You can share that with maybe your team or your higher up and mention that you attended this.
Yeah, Bendel, you can always document that you got ongoing training, right? And
Yep.
that's what the federal government wants to see. And this can absolutely be seen as that, where you can clip this and show the funny parts, and that's still considered the more entertaining parts for you, and that can still be considered training as well. Or even just reading the article that Ray put up in the chat, that can be done as ongoing training for you and your staff. You just have to document it. Hey, we went over this on this day. We talked about it. These are the people that attended. Bye. Not everything requires a certification for it currently. The ongoing training does not. If you need a specific amount of hours for something, that's something we can talk about at another time.
If they're asking for a direct reference, you can feel free to reach out to me. I just put my email in chat as well.
Yay! So yeah, bother Ray.
Yeah, you can bother me. Or yeah, if they need that, if they need, if they need you to bother me, of course. But
Perfect,
cool.
perfect.
I think one more thing I'm gonna harp on. I'm gonna post it here in chat. Um, Talked about this
Yep.
in last week's session. Our HIPAA security officer certification. This is a certification that we used to host at our in-person conferences only. And we are looking to release this in an online version. Um, our target date is April. Might end up being a little further out, but this is just a registration link. If you're a healthcare professional, business associate, a student, physician, etc., you name it, this certification is certainly for you. It really teaches you the ins and outs of HIPAA security, the privacy administrative portions, and what am I forgetting, Jose? Or no, I'm sorry,
So
physical.
we go over everything that has to do with HIPAA security.
Yes.
It's an 8-hour boot camp with a test that's afterwards. It is an actual certification. I believe that this year we're going to be getting it through. Is it JU this year or is it UCF still?
UCS.
Okay. So this is CE and this is an actual certification course. It's not free, but it is an easy way to get a certification under your belt. You'll get to spend 8 hours with myself and Dr. Delgado going over all of HIPAA security, every aspect of it from the administrative side, the technical side, and the physical side. And we will
Well,
basically be drilling in so that way you can take a
right.
test and hopefully pass it.
And unfortunately, the online version doesn't have Jose's voice. Um,
Currently, currently, but we are looking at doing a boot camp version, which will have
right,
my pretty face and
right.
my voice on there for the 8 hours.
So we're essentially talking about two different things. We're looking at doing another in person, which we will send more information out for. Or if you're
We're looking at
interested
live
in
casting
if
it,
you're
Ray.
interested in attending that in-person event or taking the online version, that registration link that I sent over, there's no paywall or anything. It is an early bird registration form. We're just using it to gauge interest. If you think that's a certification you find valuable or you're looking for more information on, just register. We're just keeping track of things through that, and we'll send more info as it comes.
Absolutely. So cool. I got a jet. I've got a 2:30 and I'm late for, but we'll see you
Awesome.
guys next week. Stay safe and out of trouble, all right?
Yep. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate your insights as always, and look forward to having your dad on next week and continuing
Yeah,
that
it'll be fun.
conversation. And thank you everyone for attending. You guys will receive some correspondence, including the full video or full link of this session and registration for next week's event. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.